You're listening to the Culips English podcast. To download the study guide for this episode, which includes the transcript, detailed vocabulary explanations, real-world examples, and a quiz, visit our website, culips.com. CULIPS.com. Hey everybody, my name is Andrew.
And I'm Suzanne.
And you're listening to Culips. Hey there, Suzanne.
Hey, Andrew. How's it going?
I am doing fantastic. How about you?
I'm pretty good. I'm drinking this tea, and I gotta say, it tastes yummy, but it's just not coffee.
Suzanne, we were joking before.
Yeah.
About tea being step 1 coffee, level 1 coffee.
Yes.
It's like the gateway drug into the world of coffee.
Mm-hmm. I think that I prefer the real thing.
Well, after this episode, you'll have to go get a nice big mug of coffee.
Yes. Yes.
It's your reward for working hard here.
Thanks. I'm already dreaming about it.
Sounds good. So today, Suzanne, we will do a simplified speech episode. And for all the listeners out there that are new to the simplified speech series, it's where we have a totally natural conversation. We use the same words, expressions, vocabulary that we do in our everyday lives, but we speak a little bit slower and as clearly as we can. And so this series is really aimed at intermediate level listeners. And if you find it a little too easy, then we would recommend checking out our Chatterbox series. That's for higher level learners. If you find that it's still a little difficult, then we'd recommend just listening many, many, many times to this episode. And practice makes perfect, right?
Yeah, that's what I always say.
As well, we have a study guide for this episode. So if you would like to access really awesome study materials like a transcript, detailed vocabulary explanations, examples of how to use those expressions naturally, as well as a quiz and questions for discussion and writing, then simply visit our website, culips.com, CULIPS.com, and you can download the study guide. All right, so let's get into it. The topic for this episode is part 3 of a series where we're talking about the trip that you did with your boyfriend, Ollie, to the west coast of the United States.
Yes.
In part 1, we talked about California. Part 2, we talked about Oregon. And we're going to wrap things up by talking about Washington State. Yay, I love Washington.
Yeah. In fact, you can see Washington or parts of it, right, from Victoria, Canada, and Vancouver, Canada.
Mm-hmm. On a clear day, you can see Mount Baker from the lower mainland of British Columbia. And that's a mountain in Washington State. And yeah, my home province is British Columbia. It borders Washington State, so I feel kind of a kinship with Washington. It's like the closest state to where I grew up, so I have an affinity for it. I like it.
Yeah, it's really a really beautiful state.
So, Sue, what was your first impression of Washington when you arrived?
Well, actually, it wasn't that great because it was the only day that it was cloudy. So it was, in fact, really crappy weather.
But maybe realistic because it does
Yeah,
rain a lot in Washington and Oregon.
totally.
That's why they call it the wet coast, right?
Yeah, exactly. And we drove north toward the Olympic Peninsula. So we stayed right on the coast, camping in this cool little surf village.
Nice.
That was really neat. So it was rainy and humid, but it was really neat, like to see this culture. So that was my first impression. But we woke up and the day was beautiful and clear, and we were ready to see the rest of Washington. So
Now, did you get to visit Seattle, or did you spend most of your time outside of the city?
yeah, we only stayed in Seattle for one day, but we got to see a lot of the neighborhoods driving around. We saw Pike's Place Market,
Yeah.
and we saw them throwing the fish,
Yep.
and we had some really delicious dinner at another craft beer place.
There's so many of them on the West Coast. Yeah. Hard to
I
avoid.
know. Yeah.
You spent just the one day in Seattle then.
One day in Seattle. Yeah. But we drove around a lot, so we saw quite a bit. We spent most of our time outside of Seattle, more in nature, and we saw the Olympic Peninsula, and this was beautiful. You can't drive through it. You have to drive around it. There are no roads that go through it. So we drove around, and it's quite a drive. It's pretty long. We stayed in the northern part of the peninsula, and we got to see Hurricane Ridge, which is this amazing viewpoint. It's a mountain range, and you have like 360-degree views of just beautiful, beautiful mountain peaks.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah. It's quite beautiful, yeah.
Now, when you were near the ocean, did you see any whales or any sea creatures?
Yeah, we saw actually a lot of whales off of the coast of the Oregon coast.
Okay.
So we saw a lot of whales on the Oregon coast. But in Washington, we took a ferry to Anacortes, which is another coastal city in the Puget Sound. Mm-hmm. So the Puget Sound is a cluster of islands west of Seattle, between Washington and Canada. Mm-hmm. And we stayed on one particular island called Orcas Island, like the whale, orca.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Orcas Island. And there we did some kayaking.
Wow.
And we saw about 30 seals on these rocks.
Huh.
And we saw all these baby seals too.
Yeah, they're cute when they're
They're
little,
so cute.
aren't they?
Yeah. And then as we kept going with the kayak, it's kind of difficult to kayak because it's in the ocean.
Yeah, I was going to say that's not an easy feat.
No, it was hard. It was actually a little treacherous at times because there are a lot of ships delivering goods, big boats, so they make more current as well.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but we saw some otters, baby otters, swimming up and down the rocks. It was so cute.
Yeah, otters are really, really cute.
Yeah, they were really funny. They were jumping and diving, and they were so cute. We didn't see a whale up close. I think we were kayaking in a cluster of islands that were too tight. I think if we were on the outskirts of the islands, we would have seen more whales in Washington. On Orcas Island, we camped at this beautiful resort called Doe Bay. And there's just so many deer on this island. Mm-hmm. They would just come and hang out by our tent.
Whoa.
and eat the grass and just hang out with us.
Whoa.
While we were eating. Yeah. This was one of my favorite places on the stop of our trip was this island. It was quite beautiful. And from the lookout point, you could see Victoria far away in the distance.
Yeah.
So we waved at Canada. We were like, hey, guys.
Did you happen to visit Victoria?
No. We did have our passport, but we didn't have time. We'll definitely be back because we feel like this trip was kind of like a taste test.
Okay.
Like a tasting menu of all of the West Coast. So we have to go back and dive deeper into one or two places that we didn't get to. But you always ask me about the food.
Yeah, that's been a theme over the last couple of episodes here. I ask you about the food because I'm so interested in the local food culture. So lay it on me. What was Washington like?
Yeah, I just want to end with this. We had one of the best meals of our trip in Doe Bay. The food was so fresh. All of the ingredients are from the island, and the fish is caught fresh that day. And so the food, because the ingredients were so fresh, I don't think I've ever had a meal like this before. It was just so fresh.
Wow.
So if you get a chance to go to the San Juan Islands, like Orcas Island, for example, go to Doe Bay and just have dinner. It's incredible. It's incredible. So, yeah, and you get to see a lot of deer just hanging out with you.
The deer and the good food and the good vibes of the West Coast. Sounds fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sue, I have one final question for you before we wrap things up.
Okay.
And that is, it seems like you visited many, many, many places during this road trip. And I'm curious, did you pre-plan the entire trip before you left? Or did you freestyle it and make it up as you went along?
Well, that's a really good question. So I did a similar trip in 2007. And that trip, we did not plan anything. We just rented a car and explored. And when we did that, we saw a lot, but we didn't really see, we missed a lot also. So this time, because I knew some of the good things to see, and because when we traveled, it was high season. And in high season, it's hard to find places to sleep.
Right.
And accommodations.
Right.
So we decided to plan some things, but keep some things open. So we knew where we would be sleeping and general things we wanted to see. But if people recommended something else, or, you know, we met new friends and they took us somewhere else, we were open to changing the plan. But at least we knew we had a place to sleep, because a lot of people go to the West Coast during this time of year because the weather is so nice. July and August.
That actually sounds like a really smart way to do it. Have your accommodation figured out, but then have a little flexibility in your day-to-day activities.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, there were moments where we actually had accommodation, but then we saw, oh, that's available too. Want to try that place? And we would inquire, but at least we knew we had a backup in case the new idea fell through.
Sure.
Otherwise, we would be sleeping in the car somewhere.
Sure.
Which isn't bad, but not every night. You don't want to do that.
Nah, not really, no.
No. I like sleeping with my body, you know, not in a chair. So
Yeah, beds are good, showers are good.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think we will wrap it up here for today, Suzanne. Thank you so much for sharing your stories and your adventures with us.
Yeah.
I think I really have to go and do a road trip on the West Coast. Hearing your story here has inspired me to start planning my own trip.
Yeah.
Guys, please make sure to visit our website, culips.com. If you want to get the study guide for this episode, that is the place, the only place, in fact, where you can download the study guide. So once again, visit culips.com for that.
You can also email us with any questions that you might have at contact@culips.com.
That sounds good, and we certainly do love to hear from you when you send us email, so please do that. All right, guys, that is it for us. We'll be back soon with another Culips episode, and we will talk to you then. Goodbye.
Bye, guys.